At Team Toyota, they've been selling and servicing new and used Toyotas in your community for over 50 years. And you can reserve your next new Toyota with them today. You'll get a realistic timeline, and even in this crazy market, they won't charge you over MSRP. Or don't wait at all. With over 75 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. And you can always trust them to maintain your current vehicle. Their service and collision centers are high-tech, comfortable, and will save you time and money. Team Toyota can help you go anywhere you want, but they'll always be your hometown team. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. Hey folks, this is the Phillies Talk Podcast presented by Team Toyota. I'm Corey Seidman, he's Ricky Bottalico. And Rick, it has been a season of big swings already for the Phillies. I'm not talking about 430-foot homers. I'm talking about all the peaks and valleys we've seen here, and it's not even mid-May. The Phillies, they had a good run to begin a stretch against difficult teams. They won 4 in a row against the Mariners and Astros. Then they lost 5 in a row, 1 in Houston, 3 to the Dodgers, and then 2 back home to the Red Sox as they welcome in another difficult opponent in the Blue Jays. But I think, it mostly starts and ends with the pitching. Phillies pitching has not been up to snuff, not done nearly what we thought. And they entered the series against the Blue Jays ranked 26th in the majors with an ERA over 5.
Yeah, I look at it this way. When you're one guy that wasn't supposed to be in the rotation and Matt Strahm was your best starter in a long stretch, I think that's an issue. I mean, right now, I think everybody's just kind of waiting for Aaron Nola and waiting for Wheeler to kind of step up a little bit. I found it a little odd that last Friday when Wheeler pitched that Rob Thompson said he pitched great. I've seen great Zach Wheeler. That was not great Zach Wheeler. I just want to see that dominant guy back, and I don't think we've seen that yet. I think Aaron Nola has showed some glimpses of going in the right direction, but his repertoire is just not the same right now. He's lost a couple miles on his fastball, and if you notice, he's throwing a lot more curveballs again. So he's kind of going back to when he came up, which I don't think is necessarily a terrible thing for him because that's a bread and butter pitch for him. But if those two guys do not get going on rolls, this is going to be a long haul for the Phillies. I mean, let's face it. I think everybody expected those two to step out on the mound, and those are games that you should win almost every time they go out there. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to go undefeated, but I mean, you should be in each and every game that they pitch, and that really hasn't been the case. And it seems like JT Realmuto said something that was interesting to me, and it actually bothered me a little bit, that he said it seems like it's one inning and then they lose focus. You can't lose focus. You're pitching once every 5 days. I mean, your focus should be phenomenal going into that game. And he's right, though. It seems like that one blow-up inning for Wheeler, Nola, it throws the game in the other direction. You can't have that. You need those guys to step up. We saw Taijuan Walker this Sunday really kind of step up and pitch extremely well. And I just think that has to do with being in the strike zone for him. He has so much movement. I was kind of scanning through the box score at the beginning of that game, and he was either striking guys out or getting ground balls. That's what you want from him, and that should be his mindset. Throw the ball in the zone, let the movement take care of everything else.
Well, Walker had said after a recent start at Dodger Stadium that he had been trying to get too cute with his secondary pitches and falling behind in counts. He made an adjustment. He threw more splitters against the Red Sox, and it worked. And to your point, I mean, Aaron Nola, he might need to make an adjustment with this repertoire because the fastball velocity, it's down 1 mile per hour. It's down from like a 93 mile per hour average to a 92. And while that might not sound significant, it's the area where he's sitting that is a lot different. Like in the first inning at Dodger Stadium last week, he was sitting 89 to 91 miles per hour. That's not Aaron Nola. I mean, he's not a traditional power pitcher, but he has 93 to 95 in his arsenal in the past. This is a guy who in the second half last season was dominant, missing as many bats as ever while maintaining the control. But this year, already twice in his first 7 starts, he's been handed a 5-run lead, and the Phillies have lost both games. I mean, just think about how much different the season might be from a momentum standpoint, if you believe in that at all. If the Phillies were able to hold either of those leads, it would have meant a win on opening day. It would have meant a sweep at Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, it should be a lot.
Salvaging a non-sweep at
Right.
Dodger Stadium.
Right, but it should be a lock when a number 1 or 2 starter gets 5 runs. That game should be over. You shouldn't even have to worry about that game. And in Aaron Nola's case, you bring up the 1 or 2 miles an hour that you lose, and you're saying sitting at 89 to 91. Okay, I understand that, but you better be very precise as to where you're throwing the baseball. And as we know, Aaron Nola, even in the past, would get away with a 95, 96 even. I've seen him throw in the past up top in the zone. He can't do that with 90, 91. You're not going to get away with it up top in the zone. Guys will catch up to those pitches. So now it comes down to location. So he's just got to be better location-wise if that fastball doesn't come back, because who knows? You don't know. You don't know if this is wear and tear. You don't know if it's from the World Series last year and pitching deep into, basically they pitched in November last year. A shortened offseason, you come back. Maybe you're just not getting that pop back that you need. He's got to be more precise, and he's got to use his breaking pitches and off-speed stuff a little bit more and in the right spots. So he's got to be more of a pitcher is what it really comes down to. Instead of going out there and just, okay, I'm going to rear back and let go of a 95 and it comes out at 91, you have to make sure that you're hitting your spots.
Ricky, this is kind of surprising, just the company the Phillies are in with these numbers, but I was looking this up this morning. So with runners in scoring position, Phillies pitchers have allowed a 311 batting average, which is second worst in all of Major League Baseball, and an 885 OPS, which is third worst. The only teams even in their vicinity in those stats are the Athletics and the Royals, two of the worst teams in either league. Is there anything you've noticed in those high-pressure spots with Phillies pitchers that have caused, those numbers to just be so far worse than the league average through 5 weeks of the season?
I'm going to bring up the pitch clock for a second because I don't think it's an excuse. Because if you watch some of the starters, I think the one thing you see is them rushing. You have 20 seconds. 20 seconds is forever when you're standing on the mound. And the other thing that I do notice is that they're letting a pitch go at 9 seconds. Or whatnot. I mean, sometimes it just comes into the situation where I don't want to make a mistake at this point in time. You get those runners in scoring position. There's obviously a little bit more pressure on you as a pitcher to keep those runs where they are, or those runners where they are. You know what? It's hard to point out in one guy, but I mean, in certain guys, I think they're rushing to the plate, and you don't have to. Like I said, 20 seconds. You go out there and I throw you a ball on the pitcher's mound and you count to 20, it is a lifetime. And I just think they used that. That was a bit of an excuse for a lot of pitchers around Major League Baseball early on. But when there's a runner on base, I think that's plenty of time and you don't have to rush. I think they feel so much that they have a timer inside of them that's going off way too soon. And when you do that, you're going to rush your pitches. You're going to get the ball up in the zone. Therefore, obviously easier for the hitter to get a look at it, drive it into the outfield. I mean, I think it's just that simple. You got to stay out of the middle of the zone. And quite frankly, when you look at, and I will include Wheeler in this, when you look at all the starting pitchers, and I'll take Strom out of this, but location has been a major issue. It's not necessarily anything else. It's just been making that mistake out over the middle of the plate. And right now, nobody's missing those mistakes.
Well, we thought that there was going to be more offense in baseball this season, and so far there has been. In fact, if you look at just the average starting pitcher so far this season, so in 2022, a year ago, the league average ERA for a starting pitcher was 4.05. This year it's 4.54. The whip has jumped up from 1.25 to 1.35. So pitching has been worse across the board, but the Phillies are still toward the bottom in a lot of these categories for starting pitchers. They're 16-19 on a 74-win pace as they enter this Blue Jay series. I don't think either of us or anybody listening to this podcast thinks the Phillies are a 74-win team. There's still, there's going to be a hot streak to, help offset what we just saw over the last week or so. But as early as it is, they're already 8 games behind the Atlanta Braves. So, I mean, you start having that conversation about, like, is the division even a consideration this year, given the fact that the Braves were favored to win? They have all that talent. Offensively, everybody is clicking for Atlanta. Like, they go out and trade for Sean Murphy, the catcher. He's been their best bat so far. I did see they lost Max Fried to an injury, which could affect things in their rotation. But, man, 8 games back already on May 9th.
That's a lot. I mean, but I think you give till mid-June to see where you really are in the standings. Because when you really think about it, if the Braves go on a 4-game losing streak, Phillies win 4 in a row, all of a sudden it's only 4 games. It's back to a race again. So I mean, you can't be too concerned yet, but I mean, if this thing rises to over 10 games, I think that's where your concern really kind of comes into play. These guys are not looking at the standings right now. They can't be. If they're out there looking at the standings in May, they got problems anyways. We could do whatever we want, but I mean, it's one of those things where the Braves are good, and they show it, and it's been like this historically since I could remember, that the Braves have always been a very, very good regular season team. And it shows. They just come out and play their game. You don't see the mistakes by the Braves like the Phillies have been making. We've seen the base pass. I mean, that's been miserable all season long. We've seen a lot of fundamental play. You go back to Schwarber last week, a couple times with Schwarber. And I mean, just throwing the ball in the right direction. You think about Marsh. Marsh had a ball out to center field last week, and he threw it halfway up the third baseline to, I believe it was Taijuan Walker 2 starts ago, threw it up the baseline. I mean, what is the thought process going on? You have to have your head on straight. And I think right now that seems to be a little bit of an issue for the Phillies, is the mental aspect of the game, not necessarily anything else. You got to get your head in the game. I know you guys went to the World Series last year, but when you're in 2023, it means nothing.
Kind of strange to be this deep into the season, still only have the one division series so far. The Phillies have played the Marlins for 3 games, and they don't face a division team until the end of the month. In fact, 15 of their first 16 series this season against teams outside the NL East. So you're getting kind of like disassociated with what's going on around the rest of the division. But Ricky, so on a positive note, Bryce Harper returned about a week ago. He was medically cleared last week to begin the series at Dodger Stadium. His first game was Tuesday, and he struggled, went 0 for 4, struck out 3 times. And the next day, right back to himself, reached base all 5 times, began a 9th-inning rally. To me, he's looked locked in. He's already homered. He's using the opposite field. He's taking his walks. Doesn't look like he's missed much time at all.
To me, it's unbelievable, because not going down, not seeing live pitch. I know what they use, the virtual type pitchers. I get that. But I mean, not seeing, game pitching with the adrenaline going, and then all of a sudden just jumping in there and it looks like he hasn't missed a beat. That to me is almost like he's bionic. I mean, like he's out of this world type player, which he is to start with. But you have to love it that he has come back and he hasn't missed a beat. That the elbow has not been an issue whatsoever. I mean, so everything kind of trending in the right direction for him. He's only going to get better too. I can't say, if you notice, he'll have an at bat here and there where it doesn't look like he's seeing the ball very well. I think that's probably because he didn't get a ton of at bats. But as he starts to pile on these at bats and he gets closer to 100 at bats for the season, everything's going to click. Every at bat's going to get better and better as the season goes on. I mean, he's going to put up some numbers when all is said and done. And the one thing that I saw though is this something that's even possible, because the Phillies lost a bunch of games when he came back. I'm wondering if they kind of relaxed a little bit offensively when he came back, saying, "Well, Bryce is back, thank goodness." I mean, I wonder if that was a weight off their shoulder and maybe it kind of backfired at the beginning of that losing streak, because sometimes you just kind of want to pass the torch. And maybe when Bryce got there, other guys thought, could take a little bit of a rest here. I don't know if that's the case, but it certainly kind of played into right when he came back.
Well, the first game of that Dodgers series was against Julio Urias, who just shut them down. I think it was one hit over 7 innings with 10 strikeouts. And they have just had such miserable regular season trips to Dodger Stadium in recent years. It's not even the same guys really that are left from some of those heartbreaking games. Like, you remember the Hector Neris game where he allowed all those home runs consecutively.
Three in a row.
In the 9th inning.
That is unreal.
So, I mean, it was like all the positivity the Phillies gained in Houston, and by beating some good pitchers and Framber Valdez and Christian Javier, they kind of gave it back with what happened in Los Angeles. I wanted to ask for your opinion about the whole Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot saga that felt like it lasted a year when in reality it only lasted 4 games. But those 4 games were just absolutely dreadful for Schwarber. 19 plate appearances, did not reach base once. And then Rob Thompson on Sunday moved him back to the 5 spot, moved Bryson Stott back to the leadoff spot. And Schwarber did hit a homer and drove in 3 runs, also walking in that game Sunday. The Phillies need to get him going. I mean, for the first month of the season, it was pretty much standard Schwarber, where there wasn't a lot of contact, a lot of strikeouts with the home runs mixed in. But when he's going cold, if he's not also walking, man, can it be brutal to watch.
I mean, this was a little different. As bad as he was playing, he wasn't playing good defense either, which wasn't helping the situation. But you have to look at it this way. You're kind of waiting on him. It's a waiting game right now. I'm not surprised. I was surprised he put him back in the leadoff spot. I didn't think that was going to happen in the first place. I thought he was going to move to 4 or 5 because what he was giving you was all or nothing. And when I believe before the game on Sunday, he was under 300 OBP. So to me, that's obviously a big issue. If you're not getting on base, you're not seeing a lot of pitches. That's not helping anybody in your lineup. It's not helping the guy on deck. It's not helping the guys in the dugout that are trying to pick something up from that starting pitcher. I think Bryson Stott brings that to the table. I like the way Stott takes his at-bats. I like that he fouls a lot of pitches off with 2 strikes and just making that pitcher work. If he goes up there, I think he had an 11 pitch at-bat on Sunday. That's making that pitcher work a lot. And that's a high-stress situation. When a guy keeps fouling balls off, you get frustrated out there. And what happens? You try to throw harder. You leave a ball out over the plate. Who knows what's going to happen? But then it doesn't help you going into the next hitter or the hitter after that. So I like Bryson Stott in that leadoff role. I think he should just stay there. I think there may be some switches maybe when there's a left-handed pitcher. I wouldn't doubt if you see Trey Turner maybe taking over the leadoff spot when there's a left-handed pitcher. But when there's righties out there, you got to expect Bryson Stott to be in that leadoff spot. I mean, Schwarber looked pretty comfortable in that 5 spot the other day. I don't know if I would move him from there at all.
You can catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone, including a great sports book. Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Ricky, within that answer, you talked about the Phillies' defense, and defensively, they gave away so many extra bases in Los Angeles. And defense has been a concern already here in the early going. With Bryce Harper back, it's great for the Phillies. It means his bat's in the middle of the lineup every day. It also means he's a designated hitter every day, which means that Kyle Schwarber, who was the DH in 18 of his first 28 starts, is in left field every day. And he was not moving great in Los Angeles. There were several balls he didn't get to. One of them, he was positioned in a way that maybe it would have been difficult anyway for him to get to. But a fleet-footed left fielder probably would have made at least one of those catches and kept another one of them from a double to a single. Nick Castellanos also in that series played what would have been a single into a triple by the ball dropping in front of him, and then he missed the angle of it. So defensively, you start to wonder, like at Citizens Bank Park, left field is a lot more manageable, it seems. It's smaller, and you have Brandon Marsh who can cover a lot of ground. But when you start to get to some of these road parks, like I think like a Pittsburgh, for example, or we saw it at Dodger Stadium, that's going to be a challenge for the Phillies defensively.
Yeah, because you got 2 guys in the corners that really can't run very well. I mean, I don't know what's up with Schwarber, though. Usually he gets really good jumps on the ball. We haven't really seen that. I mean, and that's just the mental aspect of the game. You see the ball, you take off right away and go get it. And that's that he was making up for his speed in that sense. But now I don't know if there's something nagging with him, with his legs. I don't know that. So I can't really throw that out there, but it wouldn't surprise me because he wasn't getting to balls that you would think, oh, you know what, there's a fly ball left, no problem. And all of a sudden it's falling down. Guys are running on him on top of it. So yeah, there's a lot of issues you're absolutely right about going to bigger ballparks. There's a lot of room at Dodger Stadium. And when you have that, I mean, people say, well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is you may have 50 more feet to cover than you normally would at Citizens Bank Park. Citizens Bank Park being a small ballpark makes it a little bit easier where Schwarber could maybe play deep and then come in on every ball, which makes up for a little bit of speed on top of it also. Castellanos hasn't had much of a problem at Citizens Bank Park. The only time I see him have a little problem are the balls near the line, short and near the line. And that's the same thing. That's speed. He doesn't get great jumps. And when that happens, there's going to be a lot of balls falling in. From a pitcher's perspective, you don't love that. I will tell you that much. I mean, you throw a pitch and you think, oh, there's an out to left, and all of a sudden it's dropping the guys on second base and a run scores. I mean, that turns into a little bit of a problem, but you're right, because Harper's in there, you're stuck. Yeah, I don't know what else they're going to do. I obviously they took Schwarber out of the game late the other day to bring in defensive replacement. I could see that happen a lot more as this season goes on.
Well, it's especially of note because if you're watching on YouTube, you see the graphic at the bottom of the screen. After the Phillies finish up with the Blue Jays, their next two road series are at Coors Field and then in San Francisco, which are two of the biggest outfields in all of baseball. So that could be something that, affects the upcoming trip.
And Coors, that ball gets on you fast in the outfield too. So a lot of trips to the wall if that ball is going to hit the grass. I will tell you that much. And it is, people don't understand how big that is because the ball carries there so well. They obviously made the park bigger, and it gives you a lot of space. And I know this because I used to shag balls out in center field there, and there is a lot of room in the gaps. That's why you're right. A guy like Marsh really has to come up big in a ballpark like that. If he doesn't, I mean, there's going to be a lot of doubles, a lot of triples, and that means a lot of runs scored.
Well, these next two games against the Blue Jays come in, they're 21-14. That's been an extremely competitive AL East. I think all five teams are over 500, with the Rays just leading the pack. But in these two games, the Phils are set up to face Alek Manoah, who's off to a slow start, but he's had a couple of really good years in a row to begin his career. And then they see Kevin Gausman in game two, who has that nasty splitter, just absolutely dominated the Yankees and Mariners at the end of April, 11 strikeouts, 13 Ks in consecutive scoreless outings. So offense could be a little hard to come by over these next couple games. Although when you look beyond that, these games at Coors Field and in San Francisco, the Phillies really aren't seeing any top-tier starting pitchers for about a week and a half after this.
Yeah, San Fran's not a great hitting ballpark. Day games, it's okay, but they have two night games to start that series, Friday and Saturday. So it doesn't make it, or excuse me, that's at Coors Field. I forgot what they're doing.
No, but same applies to San Fran. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a great place to hit. I mean, it's usually cooler there. Usually you don't get a jet stream going out to the outfield. So it's just one of those things where you're going to have to hit the ball on the line and use your legs. And that's not exactly the Phillies MO. You look at Coors, they're going to score runs at Coors, but you look at this series against Toronto, I think you're going to have to score some runs. I mean, that lineup, between Bichette and Guerrero, and you can go all the way up down to 6 in that lineup. They're pretty good hitters, and they're going to score some runs. So you better be buckled in when Toronto comes to town, because those guys could score some runs, and it may put a lot more pressure on Nola and Wheeler in those two games. If those guys pitch well, then maybe things are different. But if they're having that one blow-up inning, this could be a long 2 days.
Yeah, the Phillies certainly have the rotation set up the way they'd want for these two games, with Aaron Nola going in game one, Zach Wheeler going in game two. And offensively, the theme for much of the season has just been that the Phillies are able to collect hits. They're still top 10 in baseball in OPS. They're top 5 in batting average, but they're still toward the bottom of the game in runs per game, averaging 4.29, which is like just a tick above a team like the Cincinnati Reds. So the home run power for the Phillies really hasn't manifested itself consistently yet. We'll see what the next few games and series hold.
Yeah, if they could go on a little run, I mean, even if somehow they take 2 from Toronto, that would be great. I don't know if that's going to happen. But then you're going to Colorado. They're a beatable team. San Francisco's a beatable team. So you could turn your season around in this next week. So, I mean, that's what I'm looking for. This team needs to have some positive momentum for themselves. They had that for a little bit in that little winning streak they had, but then they gave it right back. I mean, this is a team that if you win 5-6 in a row, if you lose a game, you got to recover immediately. They haven't been able to do that.
Well, it was around 2 weeks from now this time last year when the Phillies season turned around. They were 8 games under 500 when that began. They're hoping to not be 8 games under 500 toward the end of this month.
Yeah, let's
they enter this Blue Jays series 3 games under, and there's that all-important NL East road trip at the end of May to Atlanta, New York, and Washington. And with teams not facing their division as much, those head-to-head matchups become even more important. So thanks a lot for listening to the Phillies Talk Podcast. You can catch Ricky on 97.5 every day and on the Phillies pre- and post-game shows. I'll be over at Citizens Bank Park for a couple Phillies Blue Jays games. So thanks for listening to the pod. We'll catch you later.